What's your theory that you can't prove but might hold up with research on it? Story one, I believe there's a link between getting motion sick and being able to tell which way is up underwater in low visibility. Like the inner ear is more accurate in people who are prone to motion sickness. I noticed in an episode of Mythbusters when Adam, super motion sick, was able to swim upwards every time when blindfolded and spun around underwater, but Jamie, Iron Gut, swam every which way. It's two data points, but I think there's something to be explored. This is fascinating. Now that you mention it, if someone were to investigate this, they should look at pro surfers. They spend a lot of time getting tumbled around in whitewater and need to be good at righting themselves. Plenty of people are so traumatized by one or two experiences with rough surf that they don't have the nerve to go back in the water, which is totally fair. Surfers also need really good balance, which is inner ear related. Most people in my family get extremely motion sick, and I have like 5 cousins who surf regularly at really rough beaches. Off the top of my head, the ones that had the worst motion sickness out of all of us as children, I don't know if it's still the case. Those cousins are the most hardcore surfers. Story two, after hearing that MS has a viral origin and that there's a cold virus that majorly increases the odds you become obese, I think we'll find out in the future that a ton of diseases have viral origins. Maybe it takes like certain genetics to interact with the virus and create the issue, but I think we'll find out that viruses are a major deal. What society looks like after that, who knows? But it'll have a major impact. All of us may be dealing with our own long virus symptoms, depending on what we've encountered and how our body reacted. Imagine how archaic future people will think we are, that we were so unaware of the long term effects of certain viruses and we were so nonchalant about it all. Story three, T Rex retained arms to bear brightly colored plumage and perform elaborate mating dances. It's not without precedent. Look up videos of the male ostrich's display, for instance, which makes heavy use of wings he sure ain't using for flying. But mostly, it just entertains me to imagine the undisputed ruler of the apex predators being all flitter, 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 flutter, flutter, flutter. Am I not a beautiful butterfly? I'm not sold on this as a T Rex thing. T Rex arms weren't large in proportion to their bodies, but were still longer than human arms, much thicker and much stronger. When you're a mouth on legs, you generally don't need arms, but those arms were probably perfectly serviceable when they did. However, Carnotaurus is a different story. Their arms were even shorter and so stubby that a lot of the joints just didn't work. They were basically vestigial. But their shoulders had wildly flexible ball joints, meaning they could flap their bitty arms like crazy any which way. They could absolutely be used for a mating dance, as shown in Prehistoric Planet. Story 4, the current push to return to the office is 100% about restoring the values of commercial office buildings. Banks get like 30% of their revenue from commercial real estate mortgage loans. If companies start realizing they don't need a $500 million building, the billionaires who bought the presidency won't add another zero to their portfolio this year. And the companies get tax benefits from the cities where the offices are for stimulating the economy via having their workers there. But in some cases, the cities may only give the company the tax benefit if they can prove a certain occupancy rate, hence return to office, which financially benefits the company at the expense of the workers who have to pay to commute and maybe park and eat lunch and buy clothes and whatnot. Story 5, that Texas Governor Greg Abbott ignored warning signs and went off the boardwalk at Yellowstone, which led to him being scalded by hot water from being too close. Okay, so hear me out. This happened in midsummer of 2016. He was severely burned. There was some speculation about how that happened. Later that year, Abbott finally came out and said he was burned by scalding water while taking a shower in a hotel in Jackson Hole. But I find that to be a really weird thing to have happened. First of all, while I'm sure there are hotels out there who set their water heating to the level that would require skin grafts, as Abbott required, it would be really weird and dangerous and unprofessional for the kind of hotel he stayed at to do that in a town that is entirely dependent on the millions of tourists that come through there. Also, the NPS reported there was a record number of people going off the boardwalks. People were ignoring warning signs, ignoring park personnel telling them to get TF out of range of the volcanic death machines, etc. There were a record number of injuries and deaths related to that, having lived in Texas for a time during Abbott's unending terms. I always got the vibe that he was the kind of person who would either ignore what experts were telling him, or assuming the rules didn't apply to him, or badgering someone into letting him do something stupid. And my theory is he just doesn't want to admit what really happened while he was vacationing in Yellowstone. Story 6. The feds caught Luigi by spying on a large portion of Americans through the security cameras at self-checkouts. I think they were running AI searches for partial matches for his face, probably with the help of a Thiel company, and definitely without search warrants. Through the self-checkout camera of every store and restaurant in the Northeast, he was caught in a McDonald's, if I remember correctly, after using one of those kiosks. The woman who called the cops said that a customer in the restaurant told her that Luigi looked similar to the United shooter, and that is what prompted her to call in her tip. I think that customer was a Fed trying to construct a parallel narrative to explain how they identified him so quickly. Story 7, I think previous generations of adults and children with ADHD partly went undetected due to the prevalence of smoking and secondhand smoking, as well as the prevalence of amphetamines to treat weight loss and other things they'd never prescribe for these days. I know some of it has to do with awareness, but nicotine does mask a lot of the effects of addiction for a good deal of people, and we were all heavily exposed to it. Not just old timers either. My mom thinks ADHD is bullcrap, and such refused to ever get me evaluated. Looking back, school would have been exceedingly more productive had I been properly diagnosed. It wasn't until my 30s that I finally got on focus medication, and my God, what a game changer. Story 8. I think some pets can sense a stranger's hormones and recognize if they're a threat. I'm not referring to pets who have past traumas that affect their behavior. I mean the pets from stories like, normally my dog hates men, but she loves this guy. Or, I knew something was wrong, my cat always hated that person. There have been recorded cases of dogs who could smell cancer and Parkinson's. So I think the premise has merit. It's a difficult study to imagine. There are countless variables that could affect the results. Is the animal protective enough of its owner to care what a stranger's intent is in the first place? Are there some hormones that wouldn't be easily recognizable? Can we parse what responses are just part of a pet's personality rather than a response to external stimuli, etc.? To be honest, I've just gotten a lot of compliments on how pets take a quick liking to me, and it would be cool to get peer-reviewed validation someday. Story 9. Remember vaping associated with lung illness? Valley? Vaping was like the worst thing ever, and people were dying. What happened to that? Suddenly there's no more Valley, and the news stopped reporting illness and deaths related to Viali. Here's my theory on why it just went away. The likely cause of Valley was vitamin E acetate, an oily substance that was used in the unregulated market to adulterate vape juice so it would have the right consistency after being diluted. Turns out, although totally safe to eat, it's not safe to inhale. But before anything could be done about the issue, the unregulated market realized vitamin E acetate was the thing killing everyone and decided to stop using it because they didn't want to be held responsible for causing mass death. They just wanted to save money on selling their illegal products, not poison their customers. And so it was a case of the illegal market self-regulating to avoid the risk of more serious charges. That's what I think happened anyway. Story 10. Here's the one I had that got me to post the question. I think the reason so many people read their horoscopes and find them oddly fitting and think their star sign describes their personality in some way is because it legitimately does. But that the cause of this is nothing to do with the arrangement of the planets and stars and everything to do with the way where your birth falls in the calendar year. It has to do with the way you are socialized. How close is your birthday to major holidays in your culture? Do you start school this year or next year because you weren't old enough? Do you have your dawn of conscious memory in the winter or the summer? If the first years really do shape your personality as much as they say, then having all your significant first milestones at different times of year probably plays a big part in how you're raised, how you view the world, and how you view yourself. Story 11, I don't even know if this could even be proven or not, but I believe time travel is both impossible and inevitable. I don't know if I can explain this coherently, but basically, all time, past, present, and future, exists at the same time. Everything that has ever happened, that is currently happening, and that will ever happen is going on all at one time, similar to quantum superposition and the many worlds interpretation. All of these events exist in a state of probability until an observation collapses them down, more or less, into a single outcome. or timeline. More so than that, time is in motion, shifting and reshaping itself across its own timeline. Things happen because time necessitates it to happen. I believe this is why big discoveries are suddenly found in the parking lot of a supermarket when we least expect them. Time required it to be found and rearranged itself to make this happen. It wasn't found because it was suddenly always there, the timeline updating itself based on ongoing events. History isn't fixed, but is constantly rewritten in ways we don't or can't perceive, because to us, it was always that way. Because of all of this, time travel is impossible. How can you accurately travel to a point that is both happening now and has already happened from a place that hasn't happened yet? At the same time, time travel is inevitable because the possibility inherently exists because we perceive time. Time travel could very well just be a perceptual shift instead of a physical destination, which means we may find a way to realign our perception to a different point in the universe. Time travelers wake up in a different moment as if no time had passed for them at all. And because no time had passed for them and this event was always going to happen, the time travelers are never the wiser about where they've come from, because the timeline will adjust to accommodate their presence in a different time and place. Story 12, ADHD is the normal human state of mind and evolved from the need to monitor many social and environmental conditions simultaneously: wild animals, human enemies, potential food sources, the weather, in order to survive. The ability to focus on one thing for a long time is neurodivergent and is only considered normal now because of relatively recent changes in the kinds of skills that society values. A corollary of this is that when a society or civilization collapses, the people with ADHD are more likely to survive and thrive. Story 13. The rich people are planning a mass culling of the general population once the AI-controlled humanoid robots are good enough to do all the manual labor. I believe the mass culling thing, but I think that they're doing it slowly, so it will take generations and no one can be blamed. And it's focused on the poor and disabled. They do it by financing elections, inventing certain laws and changes, all of which aim to reduce the ability for these people to get what they need to be able to get out of the poverty cycle or situation they are in. They provide enough to keep them paying to stay stable at a survival level only, so they can still be consumers, but they will die earlier than others. I see it in the price of medication, the waitlist for diagnosis that will enable treatments or support to live in a manner they can break the cycle, reducing all funds to anything public such as education and free doctors, emergency rooms, transport. They encourage things that will force people into crime so they can have cheap labor. Story 14, so visualize this. In a microbiology lab, we culture colonies of microorganisms in a petri dish. They are born, they propagate and die within a time span in a matter of hours and few days. That is their timeline, their lives. Now imagine this. If you look at the universe, it does look eerily similar to the colonies of microorganisms in a petri dish. Try really hard to visualize all those galaxies in one frame, and you will understand what I mean. And we are born, we propagate and die within our timeline, years. This is our timeline. The way we define and visualize time is different from what those microorganisms would envisage. So there might be higher organisms whom we can't perceive because we can't fathom their time or size, and for them, we are the microorganisms in a petri dish. Story 15. That there are cures for more diseases than we are told, but there is more money in disease treatment or management than there is cures. It's all about shareholder value. Got to keep the line going up. For decades, hepatitis C was a chronic disease. We had medicine that could manage the symptoms, so those infected wouldn't feel sick, but we couldn't get rid of it, so those infected needed to stay on medicine their whole life to treat the symptoms. Then Gilead made a cure for hepatitis C that cured like 95% of patients. Were they rewarded? No, instead they were absolutely vilified in the press for the cost and called all kinds of names. Their CEO was defending it on the news, and Congress was threatening to have hearings on it. And yes, it was expensive. However, if you did the math, it came out to like 2 years of treatment for the symptoms of hepatitis C. Here's the other side of the story. Gilead also made the medication for the symptoms. So they spent tons of money to find a cure for a disease that they were making a lot of money from the sufferers. And what was their reward? getting called price gougers for taking advantage of sick people. Now, do you think this company is going to try to find a cure for any other diseases? Would you? Story 16. The cost of everything is based on what people can just barely pay and will never go down without an exploding bubble. Houses, cars, food, and Disneyland. Just hear me out. Disneyland jacked up their prices to try and slow down traffic, but keep profits up. It blew up in their faces and made it more desirable for people to go. Used houses are priced to a point where a married couple can just barely afford them and still be house poor. At least that's how our first house was. We buried ourselves in credit card debt, trying to pay our mortgage, daycare, cars, and food. Thank God we are out of that and have things under control now. But young people are messed up in this country when it comes to housing and raising a family. Story 17. Earth is a galactic prison. We are surrounded by a void that will kill us if we leave. If you were to design the best type of permanent containment, it'd be one that was survivable and self contained, but inescapable without help from the outside. The prisoners wouldn't have the tools or the materials to escape within the jail. We are trapped on a clump of rocks and dirt that will feed and hydrate us, with a barrier of gases to keep the air that keeps us alive inside. Outside that barrier is a vacuum that will kill us instantly that goes on longer than we can measure. Now we're trapped and we can't escape. Every single thing we do here is the equivalent of making toilet wine and heating up cups of noodles with a modified electrical plug. I still enjoy my life and strive to be good, but as a species, I think we're here because we pissed someone or something off a long time ago. They keep us here where we can only hurt each other. Story 18. I'm desperately curious what humans could accomplish or become if we were immersed in something right after birth. Put us with wild animals, teach us every language known, put instruments in our hands right away, and listen to music. Make us catch a football before we get to eat. Never move anywhere without skates on. Kids have to fish, to eat, and can't leave the water, etc., etc., etc. Even better if we can take talented individuals and breed them to put their kids in specific areas. Obviously, insanely unethical, and wouldn't want anyone to actually do this, but still curious. Story 19. I think I'm accidentally stumbling upon some sort of fundamental building block of the universe, to be frank. There's three core points that I think relate, and they expand from there with varying levels of conjecture. The three core connections I think I've found: major and minor chords in music, in respect of 440 hertz and 432 hertz, as well as the concept of discordant notes and chords, have a direct correlation to visually appealing color palettes, in respect to the cones and rods that humans have. I think that both of those things also are related to the mathematical study of frequency and waveforms or functions. My hypothesis is that by combining several distinct fields of study, we can get a glimpse at something very fundamental to our existence, specifically between resonant frequency color theory and music theory. Honestly, I've never really put this stuff to paper before and really tried to coalesce all the thoughts into something cohesive. But I'm going to try really hard. First, a little bit of contextual knowledge that I'm going to be using. Colors are just light that isn't absorbed but reflected off a given surface. That resulting light can be measured in terms of frequency, amplitude, etc. That is, light can be measured as a wave function. Sounds in musical composition that are likable, or meaning not discordant or atonal, are generally complementary to one another in terms of how each individual note's wave function interacts with the others and itself. If I'm not mistaken, I could very well be, then I believe every material and set of complex materials known to man possesses a resonant frequency. Whether it is one that is achievable by humanity right now or not, doesn't matter for the sake of my conjecture. Story 20. The universe always balances itself out. Everything happens for a reason, not because of karma or whatever, although that's part of it, but more based on matter is never created or destroyed, or that energy has to be transferred into something else. I don't know much about science, and it doesn't really ease my grief when something bad or sad happens. I just really think things are connected on a much greater scale, and anything that happens to balance something out, or it will be balanced by something else, like homeostasis, or a pendulum eventually coming to rest, or regression to the mean, as illustrative examples. But in real life, if someone dies, it's because someone else needed to be born. Or if your cat dies, it allows you to open your heart to adopt another needy cat. Or if your spouse cheats on you and leaves you, it's so you can move on to the next step in your life. Again, it doesn't ease the pain and isn't meant to. It's just meant to assign an order to the universe, and things are not random. The next song of the Fire and Ice book is taking so long and won't ever be released because the TV show progressed and finished exactly as was planned for the books. And backlash has caused George R. Martin to change and cancel everything. The book release was super slow way before then, but yeah, the backlash from the last season especially probably caused significant changes to save face and legacy. He's also incredibly successful since the show and probably lost the drive to complete it. Story 21, that Denver airport has a whole hidden structure underneath it for end of world times. Tunnels. A number of rumors concerning the tunnels constructed beneath the airport surfaced as a result of the airport's delayed opening and significant budget overrun. The extent has been overstated, and there's a legend that the tunnels go to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, military installations, alien or lizard people's houses, or underground survival bunkers for the wealthy and powerful. Story 22, I always thought that DJ Marshmello was an industry plant. Marshmello was never one person. Marshmello was whomever was wearing the helmet. He came out the gate with top chart songs, instant headliners. Anyone could don the helmet. EDC 2016, Marshmello took off the helmet, and it turns out it was Tisto. Later, we'd find out that OG Marshmello was Chris Comstock, Chris's .com. Marshmello has performed with .com. You'd see Chris and he who wore the helmet at the same time. It's kind of like seeing Bruce Wayne and Batman in the same room. I wasn't all the way wrong, but I was with him from the beginning. Story 23, Brushy Bill Roberts was Billy the Kid. Theory goes that Billy didn't die in 1881. The sheriff who claimed to have killed him was in a pitch-black room and shot randomly, based on claiming he could positively ID Billy by his voice, killing a different guy whose body the sheriff passed off as Billy's, and rushed through and burial with questionable ID of the body in order to collect the reward for Billy's capture or death, and to gain respect and notoriety for being the sheriff who stopped Billy the Kid. Brushy Bill was ID'd as Billy by other former outlaws from the time period who gave notarized statements and had scars that would line up with Billy's known injuries. Brushy Bill didn't really stand to profit at all by claiming to be Billy the Kid, and he had to be searched out by people who were already researching. He didn't just show up voluntarily. His only request was to get the pardon the past governor of New Mexico had promised him in 1879 or so, which the then present governor refused to even consider. I don't know. It honestly makes more sense to me that a legendary outlaw would end up retiring into obscurity rather than being gunned down at age 21 and becoming an actual folk hero. Story 24, central banking was founded to fund war. Every war for the past 100 years would have either not happened because countries couldn't actually pay for them, or would have been on a far smaller scale because countries couldn't actually pay for them. Governments being able to print money has literally killed millions with no end in sight. Yes, I'm fun at parties. Not really, I don't go to parties because I have no life. Story 25. The 2003 Eurovision was rigged, and it cost Tattoo their victory. The Russian duo was highly controversial partly due to their image, and partly because of their rude, childish behavior. They were nevertheless in the lead when, lo and behold, technical issues made the Irish televotes unusable. An Irish standby jury came in and essentially handed Turkey the victory. From the contest's Wikipedia entry, after the contest, Russian broadcaster Channel 1 complained that Irish broadcaster RTE had used a backup jury and that it had cost them victory. A statement by Channel 1 said, "Considering the insignificant difference, Story 26, the lost city of Atlantis, is in North Africa. Either Tartessos in Spain or Thera in Greece are far more likely to have inspired Plato. The Richat structure, which I assume you're referring to, is just a cool geological feature. There's really no reason to hide the existence of ancient lost civilizations. Any archaeologist who could bring irrefutable evidence of them would become super famous. And also most of them love their jobs and would jump at the chance to find something like that just for the excitement and desire for knowledge. When places like Göbekli Tepe were found, with genuine proof of their great antiquity and complexity, they were rather promptly accepted by the academic community. Story 27 has to do with the music industry making a conscious decision to kill off rock and roll in the early 2000s. This is hilarious. Most people of middle or old age hold the opinion that music used to be good, real, and pure, but modern music is just soulless, mindless pop, created by corporations and consumed by brainless teens. Funnily enough, the old, good music is always the music which was popular during that person's formative years, 15, 25 years old. This conspiracy theory is just a fancy way of expressing the viewpoint that music used to be good when I was young, but it sucks now that I'm not. It just happens to correspond with the move away from rock and towards electronica and pop music over the last 10 to 20 years. Story 28, my favorite right now is Flat Earth. It's such an absurd theory, yet for some reason it has many followers and believers. Mine's favorite changes frequently, though. I love going down rabbit holes of bizarre ideas. I like to dig into this every once in a while. Not only are the videos proving the Earth is not a ball so poorly done or involve such bizarre pretzels of logic, but FE types can't even agree on what the non globe world is. Is it a disk? Is it 100 feet thick or miles thick? Is Antarctica an ice wall at the edge of the disk, or a barrier that keeps us from seeing the utopia that lies beyond? If it is a disk under a dome moving up, if so, what powers it, etc. I haven't seen one version that covers seasons, day and night, tides, gravity, planetary and celestial motion in one coherent theory. Astoundingly, they are convinced it isn't a globe, but also can't tell you what it really is. Story 29, I'm currently on the Bigfoot phenomenon. But in this case, there's compelling evidence, not just speculation. What are your thoughts on the phenomenon? I'm hopeful for sure. I used to live in an area with listed sightings on the BFRO website. I've heard very strange things and had 4 dogs disappear in a short amount of time. I believe some people when they describe what they've seen. I just can't say with certainty that it exists just the same as everyone else. I don't consider myself a skeptic necessarily because I've lived long enough to know that there are things we can't explain. Story 30. The US government has evidence of extraterrestrial life, not contact, but evidence, and they're not telling us. Colonels, admirals, Air Force, Navy, and commercial pilots, FAA officials, whistleblowers from intelligence committees, declassified files. This has it all. Regardless of anyone's stance on the existence of extraterrestrial life, there's more to it than what's in the mainstream media. I'm hoping that the Congress and senators like Schumer and Rounds continue to do more for the UAP transparency. Pretty odd how their UAP amendment was shot down and replaced with a nothing burger. Odd times these are. I've been spending a lot of time on the topic lately. Story 31, that you're not real. It's an AI program asking questions instead. Once I read that 70% of online accounts were bots, and it has scared the crap out of me ever since. I don't even go on Twitter at all anymore, especially as the rage bait aspect of it has turned up so much since approximately 2016, and that a lot of these crazy, stupid opinions I've never ever heard anyone say in real life. I think much of the civil unrest we experience as a result of bullcrap culture war stuff is a result of fake Twitter bots. I mean, even something as simple as the emergence of the hashtag Black Lives Matter. I truly think landing on that as the slogan is some dastardly bot behavior to enrage people. Why something so vague and easy to discredit instead of just don't suit black people or something equivalent? I'm very pro social rights, but I remember seeing the slogan and my immediate thought being, yeah, but everyone else's lives matter also? Long story short, I agree. I think the fabric of our society has been being manipulated by AA and bots for some time now. Story 32, this isn't mine. I just heard it once. You know how the Mayan or Aztec calendar ended in December of 2012 and the world was supposed to end? The theory is that it did end, and we just don't know it. Just the world keeps getting more and more messed up because it's still ending or whatever. Natural disasters getting worse each year, climate crises happening faster than anticipated. The US government was like, bro, there's aliens. Everything just keeps getting weirder and more messed up. Story 33, Kansas State University was cheated out of a spot in the 1998 BCS championship game because they are a small market school with a small brand in favor of a larger market brand in order to drive ratings for the championship game. The NCAA, BCS, and the television networks invited the U.S. government to test EPMP technology on student athletes to influence the outcomes of two key games, one being the 1998 Big 12 Conference Championship game. K-State suffered a suspicious, costly fumble that resulted in them not only losing the game, but also dropping out of the top two in the final rankings before the championship, and ultimately being dropped from the BCS altogether. This ultimately led to the creation of a rule called the Kansas State Rule, which basically guaranteed the third-ranked school in the final BCS standings of the regular season a spot in a BCS bowl game. It's a rule that Kansas State has not only never personally benefited from, but was also twice violated in favor of larger brand teams in the Premier Bowl games.